Okay. So we have about 19 participants. Sarah, do you want me to wait another minute?
Um, I know you have a full hour, so I'd say go ahead.
Started. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to today's AALPD webinar on engaging employers. We're going to talk today about how to build bridges within adult education for workforce success for our participants. And our webinar today is sponsored by the Association of Adult Literacy Professional Developers. And our organization, for those of you that are not familiar, has three primary purposes. Our first is a community. We have a beautiful community and network of fellow professional developers. And it's one of my favorite things about the organization since I joined over a decade ago is just the network of other people that do what we do every day. And it has really a testament to where I'm at today in my career. The other thing that we do is provide professional development specifically for professional developers. So, where do we go when we need professional development? Well, we're your people. And so you found us, and we're happy to do that. We have monthly webinars, and I'll spotlight some upcoming events towards the end of our time together. And then finally, we set standards for professional development in adult education for PD. And so we're currently going through a revamp of those standards, and we'll be really excited to share them with you when we're ready. But I have the pleasure today of talking with you about employer engagement. So my name is Kim Glenn. I work for an organization called EDSI. I've been with EDSI for over 23 years, so my entire career has basically been in the talent development space, whether it is adult education and instructional design work, to things like workforce development and executive coaching and culture change, and organizational development, which gives me a wide perspective on employer needs outside of just my work within adult education. I actually started my career as a business service representative in a WIOA. It was a WIOA program. So I worked in Title I, and my whole job was finding employers. That's what I got charged with doing. So, what I'm going to share with you today is really rooted in over 20 years of experience doing this type of work. And so, I'm hoping that you find a lot of value in it. I'm really fortunate that I have been on the board of AALPD for quite a long time now, and I am our COABE liaison. So I work with COABE on the professional development strand of the conference, and it's always my pleasure to provide that service. But I'm also a part of a few other organizations that I think are worthy of mentioning today. One of which is Ideas Generation. So this is a group that focuses on inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and belonging. And so that is a coalition of individuals who get together to continue that effort despite the barriers and obstacles that we face. And most recently, I became part of the Association of Talent Development's Chief Talent Development Officer group, where I get to work with about 20 other individuals from across the world in shaping the future of talent development for ATD. So that's given me a lot of really rich perspective on what employers are looking for and how education can partner with employers to help fill some of these gaps. So with EDSI having over 180 workforce development programs in 10 different states, and we've worked in way more than 10, but that's currently what we have on our belt. We've run the gamut of all the WIOA titles. Not only do we run workforce development programs where our job is to help get job placement for individuals, we are also Michigan's adult education professional development provider. We partner with the state. And many of our programs, we are actually a provider of adult education services directly. So I'm able to speak to you today from a lot of different angles and a lot of different lenses about how we can partner as adult education programs with workforce in order to improve our customers. At EDSI, we practice servant leadership with core values of show up, smile, and support. So I'm going to show up, smile, and support you guys today. So please don't hesitate to reach out in the chat if you have any questions. Um, but we're going to talk today about several things. The first thing is you need to understand the landscape of adult education and the impact that the moving of adult ed from DOE to DOL is going to have on the work that we do every day. The other thing is you need to learn how to articulate the business case for employer engagement within adult education. And that's not talking our typical education language. We have to learn a whole new language when we're doing that. So I'll talk with you a little bit today about some of that language that you can start to use. Um, by the end of the workshop, you're going to be able to locate and prioritize potential employer partners. I'm going to introduce you to four strategic channels that you can access in order to do that. And you'll learn how to navigate gatekeepers. One of the toughest things in all sales work is getting past that person that won't let you talk to the decision maker. So I'm going to introduce you to the bridge framework that's going to help you with getting past those gatekeepers. And then finally, if the computer cooperates, I'm going to give you some strategies that you can implement. I say next week because it's a Thursday and I don't want to push you guys, but literally you can implement them right now as soon as we're done the workshop. So that's what we're going to do with our time together today. I do have a resource packet. I'm going to ask my friend Jen Blanchard if she could drop the resource packet that we created. It's a toolkit. It has templates and forms, everything that you will need to support your implementation of the content from this workshop. So while Jen gets that together, I surprised her. She didn't know I was asking her to do that. But as she gets that together and drops it in the chat, I'm going to move us over to our first poll. So if you scan that QR code, you can go ahead and pop on in to our first question. I am curious, as you guys partner and look to work with employers, what is your biggest challenge in employer engagement? Is it getting past those gatekeepers to find a decision maker? Is it understanding employer needs? Is it aligning curriculum with those workforce demands? Maybe you have a hard time sustaining long-term partnerships, or maybe finding the right employers to target. So let's take a look. Here we go. We're going to show some results. Excellent. Okay. As our data comes in, looking at finding the right employers, sustaining long-term partnerships. Okay. Yeah, so both of those take work. Thank you guys for letting me know kind of where you're falling. We got a little bit across the board, which is good because we will touch on each of these as we go forward. But finding those partners, engaging them and keeping them engaged is a tough thing. And so you have to be really diligent about it. And so we're going to get to talk about that a little bit in just a moment. But I want to share a little bit about the landscape of education as well as the workforce with you. But we're going to do a predictive poll really quick. So this is going to give you an opportunity to test your knowledge. Can you match the statistic to the item? And so I'm going to give you guys a moment to join, and then we're going to start, and you're going to get a few minutes to see if you can. There we go. Let's get our players ready. And you're going to get 2 minutes to see if you can match them up. All right. And let's see how this goes. I always like to see if these things work. Couldn't establish a connection. Please retract. Does it work on your end, guys?
It says on mine, it says get ready to play. The question will start soon.
Me too.
Okay. Well, because it doesn't want to operate, we're going to skip the predictive poll. And we're going to move right on into, I had a hard time with this yesterday, so I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but technology, we try. Um, so this was a game to see if you could match each statistic with what you think it represents. And so I'm going to cheat and just go ahead because I think it's important that we get through all of our content today. So the landscape that we're working with currently, what we're seeing is that 64% of HR leaders are saying that there's a skills gap in the workforce. 64%. And 40 of them are estimating that a skill is losing its usability within 4 years or less. Now that's staggering. What that tells us is that we need to be thinking about ongoing and rapid skill development. So short-term skill gains and stacking them one on top of each other. The time of kind of those long-term training programs, we're seeing a transition out of that. And we're looking at 44% of employers saying it's increasingly more difficult to fill their skill gaps that they're seeing in the workforce. We in adult ed have an opportunity to take advantage of that. We have a talent pipeline that they aren't even thinking about. So, if 90% of employers would hire a candidate without a 4-year degree, what are we waiting for with building those bridges and taking some next steps? Now, COABE did release their workforce flyer for 2025, letting us know that there are 3.2 million adult learners. And 51,000 of those are in integrated education and training programs, which are one of our fastest ways to get people into higher skilled, skill-based employment. And so only 51,000 out of 3.2, I think that there's a lot of opportunity, and so does COABE, because COABE is telling us that 60% of adult learners are currently not working. And out of that 60%, 63% are of working age. So the industry is telling us, the landscape is telling us, we need skills, not degrees necessarily, right? Outside of high school, diploma, GED, and even that is, it's the skill stacking is becoming more and more important than anything else. But 90% of employers would consider hiring a candidate without a 4-year degree. And we are seeing across the country an increase in attrition in the fields that you see, particularly communication, media, and technology has the highest attrition rate that went like 130% increase in attrition. And there are some industries that we are seeing a decrease in attrition. This information helps us determine where we should be looking, where we should target. Now, you want to look at your local regional data when you're making decisions about what to target and see what's going on in your area. But this is a national perspective about where we might want to take our efforts when we're looking at working with employers. So, when we're talking about this transition from the Department of Education to the Department of Labor, what are we really talking about and how does that impact us? Well, it impacts us in a few different ways. But first and foremost, the shift really does align us with what employers are actually needing right now. And that is they need hires and they need skills. WIOA funding is increasingly requiring us to connect to employment outcomes. And so we're going to see performance metrics more closely tied to those, as well as an increased focus on like the wage gain aspect. And this is going to require us to integrate with our workforce development centers. And this is really telling us that employer engagement is not optional anymore. We can't say, oh, it's a nice to have, or oh, that would be great, as it is becoming an essential component of how we need to operate our programs. So it's definitely something that we want to take into consideration. And there are a lot of skills that exist. If anybody's looked into skills taxonomies, they're incredibly overwhelming, right? There's a huge trend to move to capabilities to kind of make sense of skills. But 81% of employers said that they are doubling down on skill-based hiring over paper-based hiring. And with that, 85% of jobs are filled through connections. So if we're looking at 85% of jobs still being filled through some type of connection, and our employers are telling us they're doubling down on skill-based hiring, we can serve as a conduit, as that person that can connect our learners to employers and be that kind of connection to help them get into that hidden job market, that 85%. And I just wanted to throw this statistic on here because it goes into kind of that networking element. And it's at 75% of new hires that were interviewed said that LinkedIn was critical to landing their new role. So this also goes to show us how imperative it is for us to be integrating, creating quality LinkedIn profiles and teaching our learners how to navigate LinkedIn as part of our curriculum because we won't be preparing them for that 85% hidden job market. And the reason we're seeing all of this is because the world is changing overnight super, super fast, right? You have remote work, you have AI, you have technology innovation that is reshaping entire industries. And what matters most is whether or not you can actually adapt and solve problems and execute. And so you don't need a 4 year degree to do all of that. And employers are starting to wisen up. They're moving more towards certifications and portfolios and demonstrated outcomes, speaking much louder than transcripts. We're hiring for instructional designers right now. It says we require a 4 year degree, but I'm seeing people that don't have it that have more skills than I could ever imagine. And we're absolutely looking at them. So the degrees are mattering a little bit less. And what we're seeing is that experience is now a competitive edge. And so that is really important to note. Experience has become a competitive edge in the job market. Difficult for people that don't have work experience, but we'll get them there through internships, through work-based learning, things like that. But as we look at kind of this untapped talent pool that we have within adult education, I want to introduce you to the concept of stars. And I don't know if anyone is familiar with this, but these are individuals who are skilled through alternative routes. And that could be any alternative route. It's just not a traditional like high school, college, da 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 da. There are 70 plus million of these individuals. And what we're seeing is that 85% of those employers, at the 81% that are doubling down on skill-based hiring, 85% are actually using skill-based hiring. And 53% have already removed degree requirements. And so the time is right for us. And the shift is happening at a time where the demographics of workforce development have changed and evolved so much that employers are hungry and they need solutions. And we could be a part of that solution for them. Um, this was a statistic from Workday's Global Workforce Report, and I just wanted to throw this on here because it said that 75% of industries are experiencing voluntary turnover of high potential employees. High potential employees are those that have great skill that are above where they're currently positioned on the org chart, but the employers haven't necessarily recognized or take advantage of that skill to move them up. So what we're seeing in high potential employees is they're bouncing around to find that one bump up that recognizes the skills that they built within an organization. So we have all this untapped potential, right? We have all these adult learners that have this capability. And stars, right, our learners who are working are getting that experience, building skills in non-traditional pathways in different ways. And so, what we have to start doing when we engage with employers is helping them understand that really, truly, stars are an underutilized talent pipeline for them. And low wage does not mean low skill. And I think that that's a misconception all the time. We see more and more people taking certifications on their own, taking a course here, learning a skill, being able to demonstrate things via portfolios of work. And that is meaning more to employers than anything else. So we want to make sure that we are, when we're talking about employer partnerships for our adult learners, we're really selling it in a way that says this is your solution to your talent pipeline issues. They are an overlooked talent pool. Employers don't think about them. And stars have different journeys. There's not one path, so it's not like you could be like, I'm going to send all my people on a star route. All different journeys, no rhyme or reason to how that happens. So we have the population of people. Employers are looking for it. They're making changes in how they hire and partner. So how do we position ourselves and how do we demonstrate value of what we have to offer? So let's just say that you have a hospital nearby or a healthcare facility and they have a challenge. They basically need 50 CNAs. They're down 50 CNAs. They have a 40% turnover rate. And let's just say it costs them $3,500 per new hire for recruitment and training. Now, what is our solution? If I'm an adult ed provider and I go in, you want to look at and say, what is the value that I'm providing? I'm not just providing GED classes. I'm not just providing adult basic education. I am 1000% providing a value to the employer, and that is pre-trained, certified, work-ready candidates. I think an IET would be a hit here. IETs are really a winning secret sauce for this. But our value to this employer would be that we can provide a structured pipeline delivering, I just made this up, but 15 qualified candidates every 12 weeks. This is the type of language we need to use when we talk to employers because they're not going to necessarily understand how critical a quick measurable skill gain might be. But they are going to understand that you're going to solve their turnover issue and save them money. So we have to learn how to talk their talk. So when it comes to value, you think about how you would position your program's value. We want to avoid things like we offer healthcare training. You know how many people offer healthcare training? What do we do differently? Well, we reduce CNA turnover by 35%. Rather than saying we teach workplace English, we could instead say we eliminate communication errors that cause safety incidents. Rather than saying we provide basic education classes, we could say we ensure workers are productive from day one. So it's just taking what we typically use as our language and translating that and saying, how is this valuable to an employer and how can I put that into language? So I do give you some templates in the packet. There's tons of templates with fill in the blanks for you to get started. Um, I always customize, so I tried to give you generic, get you started stuff, but these are really blueprints to help you get started in learning how to articulate your value. And so let's take a look at an example. Um, we help healthcare systems solve 40% CNA turnover crisis by providing pre-trained certified nursing assistants who understand patient care expectations, big deal, right? And healthcare workplace culture, even bigger deal because there's healthcare burnout, right? Which results in 30% higher retention rates and 145,000 in annual cost savings. I am going to show you the ROI calculator that helps you determine how to get those numbers. Um, but that is a way more compelling introduction to have employers partner with us rather than saying, we help individuals achieve their high school diploma or HSC and get them certified training and they'll be ready for you. That's less enticing as I'm going to help you reduce your 40% CNA turnover and have people hit the ground running and save you money. And unfortunately, that's the language we have to learn how to talk. So, as we think about that value, many of you said, where do I find these great employer partners? So, I promised you four channels where you could go ahead and find fantastic employer partners. So, you have industry associations and chambers, perhaps my favorite, workforce development ecosystem, fast, easy, at the tip of your fingertips. You have business intelligence and direct outreach. That's a little bit more legwork, right? Maybe a little bit more ongoing, keeping an eye on the landscape. And then you have your warm referrals, which no one likes a cold call. And trust me, I did them. I don't like them, and I don't recommend doing them. They're not as effective as following the process I'm going to lay out for you. So when we talk about industries and associations, I love industry partnership associations, whether it be manufacturing or healthcare. Chamber of Commerce is a great place to go to. Trade organizations or meetings are fantastic places where you can also network. So finding some local industry associations is a really, really, really fantastic place to start. But you might want to start with your quickest win, which would be to partner with your workforce development one-stop centers. They already have business service teams. Both Title I and Title III have business service representatives. They're already out there communicating with employers and they have access to some additional funding. They might be able to offset on the job training funds with some ITA funding. So if you can partner with your one-stops, you might be able to braid funding together in a way that benefits your employer even more than if you wanted one partner were to do it on their own. So it's just something that I want you to take into consideration that that resource already exists for you. And if you're not capitalizing off of it, we definitely should be. For business intelligence and direct outreach, um, there's things like the LinkedIn Sales Navigator if you are a decision maker, but I really like looking at business journals, local community business development newsletters. We have one for our township, and it tells us all about what's happening with industry, and I find it to be incredibly helpful. New business licensing databases are also fantastic. If you have a new business coming to town, keeping an eye on that gives you an opportunity to maybe reach out before they figure out their talent pipeline solution. And then finally, the fourth area is your warm referrals. So if you have an employer, another employer referral is fantastic. Families and friends, basically anywhere, alumni networks, any warm referral you can get is way better than going in cold because that's where people get stuck is getting past that gatekeeper. So I want to share with you some best practices in accessing industry partnerships and utilizing them to grow your employer relationships. It's not, I'm going to go to my first industry association and leave with 15 contacts, and everyone wants to use our services. It's a process. You are there to build trust with these employers, and trust is not built overnight. You wouldn't show up to a first date, especially a blind date, and propose to somebody. So we're not going to walk into an industry partnership meeting or a very first meeting with an employer and be like, "Hey, can I refer people to you?" It's definitely not something that you're going to lead in with. You have to build a relationship and trust first. So the first month to three, I highly recommend you listen. You show up, you listen, and you take notes. What are you hearing them say? Then, once you have more and more information, you start to maybe find people that are talking about the same things or seem really interested. Then you're really starting to understand challenges on a deeper level and building quality relationships. And then you probably position yourself as a workforce solution. Now, I've done it faster than this, and those might be unique circumstances. But I will tell you, the trust built is the number one thing that is going to keep that partnership sustained. So you want to make sure you have high level trust. So when you're at those industry association meetings and you want to approach an employer, I have, another little template for you for an introduction if you're looking for that. But I want you to listen for what the employers are saying. They might be saying we can't find reliable workers. Maybe they're saying something like training costs are too high and they're killing us. Turnover is murdering us. Communication barriers are causing problems. Maybe entry level positions are super hard for us to keep people in. It could be anything, but you're going to start listening for those problems that talent pipeline solutions can solve. And a real result is in Pennsylvania. I actually did this with the Southeastern Pennsylvania Manufacturing Alliance. Before IETs were technically IETs, we did a program like this and we built it with the industry association. So you want to talk about leveraging funds, right? The industry association took contributions from their members and supported the development of a contextualized ABE program that also resulted in some technical certifications that could fill entry-level manufacturing positions quicker. We went through with this, we built this together, and then we were having people go through it. The commitment was they would interview people. That was their commitment. The employers that participated said that they would interview people. They interviewed them. And then they started to say, when's your next cohort? And then they said, we're going to wait to hire until your next cohort graduates. So quick wins, being able to demonstrate value, solve employers' immediate problems. These are things that help garnish kind of that industry association pinpoint. And I really do love industry associations for that. Now, I did tell you guys that you should look for business expansion opportunities. And sometimes you can find that organically, and sometimes you have to go on the hunt for it. But if you hear that there's a business that is starting up, or maybe a business is expanding, um, you definitely want to follow up on that because that's an opportunity for you. So keep an eye on what's going on in your community through various business journals and economic development opportunities. LinkedIn is a great place to also keep track. But there is an optimal timing, right? You don't want to be too late and you don't want to be too early. If you're too early in the game, they're going to say we're not ready yet. And if you're too late, they would have already solved their problem. So you want to make sure you're like 3 to 6 months after an expansion is mentioned. I don't like to go in too fast because they are really overwhelmed and they didn't even figure out a strategy yet. So the timing is important. And then the value proposition here is that we're a workforce pipeline for growth. And so what does that look like? Well, maybe it says, I saw your expansion announcement. Congratulations, really excited. We help companies build reliable workforce pipelines for growth like this. Could I speak with somebody who is handling your talent strategy for this expansion? I would love to collaborate. We're not focused on selling high school equivalency, GED, ABE, ESL. We're focused on solving the employer problem. So I'm going to introduce you to the bridge framework. And that framework is fantastic for getting past those gatekeepers. I don't know how many times I would call and not get returned calls or not get the right person. So this framework has been instrumental in helping figure out how to get to the right people and how to get results. So the B stands for build intelligence, and that's research first. So what we just talked about, that's really the B part of the bridge. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. Then you want to make sure that you reach the right person. Everyone always says, "Can I speak to HR?" And that is number one biggest mistake. HR generalists typically don't have any decision-making power. You want to find the person that has the pain point, and then you want to find them. So it's operations managers, talent acquisition people, right? It is anybody who's actually responsible for filling those roles or feels the pain of the challenge not having those roles filled brings, or the mistakes or the errors, right? So finding the right person is critical. Once you find the right person, you have to identify those mutual benefits. How is this benefiting us and our learners? But how is it benefiting the employer? You have to find the mutual benefit. Then you need to demonstrate value early. Small wins are the way to go, right? Small wins up front get you in the door, build confidence, build success, and then allow you to kind of go deeper. And then once you kind of have your pilot going, you got some small wins, you're really generating that sustained engagement. And that is just diligence with touch bases, right? And evolution and continuous improvement. You have to be able to evaluate your relationship with the employers. Is it working? Is it not working? Do we need to change our curriculum at all? Have your challenges changed? Is there anything we need to do differently? Employers want to feel like you are a partner, not that you're trying to sell them something. They want to feel like you are a partner helping them solve their problems. So, this model helps us build a bridge to those sustainable partnerships. So, I do have another poll. It's not a quiz, so hopefully it works fine. Um, when you look at the steps of bridge, right? Building intelligence, reaching the right person, identifying mutual benefits, demonstrating value early, generating sustained engagement, evaluating and evolving and expanding the relationship, where do you guys feel that you either are experiencing the most challenge or potentially would experience the most challenge in each of these steps? Which part of that bridge program? Reaching the right person. Yeah, that's definitely a tough one. Generating sustained engagement, demonstrating value early can be tough. Okay. Love seeing this. All right. So we have around 40% saying reach the right person. Got a tie for demonstrating value early and some sustained engagement and identifying mutual. Oh, not anymore. No ties anymore. I love it. All right. Now the tie is between reaching the right person and demonstrating value early, which can seem really hard, especially considering the cycles of how long it takes some of our learners to get through programs. Um, Thank you for that. Let's talk about reaching that right person first. Um, so I always like to lead with my services are free. That was the best part about having WIOA funding was that services are free and you're like, yay, right? Like WIOA, like I get to offer you like free services. Made the sell so much easier if you think about it that way. But when we look at kind of all of it, what we want to kind of take a look at are things we want to say and things we don't want to say, right? So things we don't want to say, educational services, ABE, GED. Things we do want to say, workforce pipeline, training partnerships, talent development solutions. I'm going to drill this home as much as I can. We have to use business outcomes language. And reaching the right person means saying the right words to get us to the right people, right? And so that's what you're thinking. What words are going to get me to the decision maker and the right people? And it's not selling my services, it's helping them solve their problems. So we need to learn how to speak business language and provide value to our employers. And so you want to frame things around business metrics, ROIs, right? Cost saving calculations, retention rates, turnover reductions, time to productivity improvements, quality and safety enhancements. These are the types of metrics that if we can tie our work to, they're going to be more likely to want to partner with us and bring on some of our people. Um, how many of them get high school diplomas, GEDs, or how many gains they've gotten is much less of a priority for our employers. And so we need to be able to translate into business speak, as I call it. And then early value demonstration ideas. There's a few that I have, and I'm always happy to brainstorm with anybody. But I have seen situations where there was a small soft skills workshop for new hires. And what that did is it allowed that program to show, look, this is a part of the services that we do provide. And by giving this, they tracked those new hires and then they were able to see whether or not that had a difference. And it did have a difference in that situation. And then that was a really quick step in. So they did it kind of like, hey, we're going to come in, we'll help you with your orientation, we'll offer this. Would you be willing to let us come in and spend 2 hours? Um, I've seen organizations administer workplace communication assessments. I've seen them administer something like the Acumax Index to new hires and then have a quick training on that to show how communication in the workplace can evolve. Safety training in multiple languages or helping with translation of safety materials into other languages or even teaching non-native English speakers safety things within the context of an ESL classroom. And even basic skills evaluation. We've done tape tests with employers for quick value wins. And all of those things are ways that while we build a larger talent pipeline and a more robust program, we're able to do. And so, an example of this, I'm using manufacturing a lot. It's kind of how we got kicked off with a lot of our IET programming. Um, but there was one manufacturing employer in Michigan, and we offered to first and foremost do a professional workplace communication workshop. They were really struggling with that. So we had 15 participants go through it, 100% completion. And the result at the end of that was that they saw those people using the communication tools we provided them with amongst that department and they had a much better overall communication rate. They had a reduction in errors. They had much improved productivity time. So that resulted in the employer agreeing to interview candidates that we refer to them who complete our manufacturing IET program because that type of stuff is embedded in the work that we do. So by demonstrating that small, quick win, we were able to get a longer, more sustained contract to work with them. So long-term relationship management, when we're talking about the G and E steps, this is where a lot of you said, like, you're like, how do we do this? Honestly, y'all, you just gotta schedule it, a part of it. It's you just gotta do monthly check-ins. They don't have to be 30 minutes, they could be 5 minutes. But you have to make sure that you're maintaining a relationship, right? Even if you don't have active programming, your job is still to maintain the relationship, right? Quarterly business reviews. How are they doing as a business? Are you asking questions to see what we've done, how it's improved, is it working? What are your metrics now? What are your challenges? And my favorite part is when they let us into annual strategic planning sessions, right? Long-term workforce planning with an employer partner shows how much they truly value what you're bringing to the table. And so it's only happened a handful of times, but when you get it, it is magic. And then it becomes its own beast in its own pipeline. And it was absolutely beautiful to watch. So, with that sustained engagement, you're trying to continue to create mutual dependency. You want to be able to continue to fill their needs, but they need to continue to need you. So, I do things like joint curriculum development with my employers. That way, maybe we create very customized on-ramp programs for them. Um, I've done shared grant applications to get some additional funding to fund a program, co-designed assessments with them, even participated on advisory boards for different initiatives. So that is one way that I've, over the years, tried to maintain and sustain relationships. You have to constantly evolve the value that you can bring to the table. And then ultimately continuously improve. If you're not going back and saying, how is this person doing? How are they working out? What gaps are we still seeing? How can we improve our program? That is not a partnership if we're not doing that, right? So make sure that you're tracking your outcomes. And I give you a ton of templates and tools to track your outcomes. So feel free to modify and use those. Make sure you adapt your program as needs change and consider expanding. Maybe you started off with CNAs, but maybe now you want to go to medical assistants. Maybe you got a good CNA pipeline going. Maybe turnover is really low and there's less of a hiring need there, but they have a hiring need someplace else. If you can begin to expand, that's when you have a really strong partnership. So figure out a place to start and then figure out how you can continue to expand. Because sustainability is ultimately our goal with partnerships with employers. So in phase one of our sustainability, we're really looking at small, low risk demonstrations, high visibility, right? And immediate value and regular feedback and communication. When we hit kind of months 4 to 12, which we call kind of phase two, you might have some formal agreements in place. Maybe you don't, maybe you do. I always like to at least get a formal agreement that they will interview our candidates, right? What this does is it really makes the process easier. They're not committing to hiring, they're just committing to interviewing. And I find that if they commit to interview, our people, when they go through our programs, knock their socks off and they say that they're the best group that they've had in a long time. So um, make sure that you do joint planning, make sure you have shared metrics, you're both working towards the same goals, and regular reporting and relationship building. By the time you get to phase three, what you're really looking at is potentially working with multiple departments, multiple jobs. Your employer is a champion of some of the technical development, maybe for an IET program or giving you additional guidance. Maybe they're giving you referrals to other organizations that also have hiring needs. And maybe you get to be strategically planning with them, which is always one of my favorite goals. So we're sustaining those partnerships. I tell you, you got to meet with them. I also include meeting agendas in the packet. So I give you sample meeting agendas to help you through it all. But you have to look for the metrics. And I want to make sure that you're looking at quantitative and qualitative because the qualitative is what helps us tell a story with the quantitative. And so you collect data from day one, not when you need to report. So you want to determine the metrics that you're going to measure before and you want to track them. So not just those lagging metrics of X number of people in jobs with X number of wage, right? Like that's your lagging measure. What does it take to get that to happen? We need to start tracking those immediately on day one. So some quantitative metrics could include placement rates, retention comparisons, wage progressions, cost savings. That's your kind of black and white numbers. But the qualitative impact, I love getting supervisor testimonials and feedback, employee success stories and advancements. I loved it. One of my favorite things was the very first person I got a job in a workforce development program. She had a criminal background and she wanted to work in a bank. And we were like, what the heck? Like, we got it expunged. She started off and she had a huge retail career. She was overly qualified for this role. She had to get her HSC, so we got her GED, we get her a job at Commerce Bank at the time. And she came back to me a year later to tell me that she was promoted to be the supervisor. And the joy on her face, right? But I had to do a lot of work to convince the bank that this woman who was working on her high school equivalency had the skills that they needed already and that she could provide value and save them money and help them. And so, but if she didn't come back, if I wasn't communicating with that employer regularly, I might never know that story in order to share with others. And so you want to be able to document all of this. And so this is an example. I actually used a really cool tool called MyLens AI. And what it did is it put together an example of the cost saving calculator for us. MyLens AI. I recommend using it first with minimal data because if you put too much data in there, it can get overwhelming. But what it did for us is it broke down, this is a mock example, but what an annual investment might look like and where annual savings might come from. So maybe there's savings from recruitment. Maybe they're not placing ads. They're not wasting recruiter time. They're not, posting for jobs. Maybe they're saving money on training. Maybe there's productivity gains. Maybe there's quality improvements. And so let's just say that the investment from the employer is $25,000, right? Between supporting the operations, maybe some staff time to coordinate. Maybe they're helping customize some training or doing some administrative support. The return on investment for that type of initiative would be 92%. So for every dollar that the employer contributes to the partnership, they're getting $1.92 back in value. All right. And so if you want to break that down, what we can do is look at how we calculate that net benefit. And so you take the total savings minus the investment, which gives us the 23,000. And then to calculate the ROI, you take the net benefit, you divide it by the investment, and you times it by 100. And that gives us our 92%. And I just want to point out that this type of ROI compounds over time. The more you work with the employer, the higher the ROI increase that happens. And this is a formula that you can use right away. If you get some data from them, you can absolutely have this rolling right away. So take a look at, the ROI calculator in your toolkit because I think that that will help you tremendously. A few challenges that I just want to pop up real fast because some of you put them down. They won't return my calls is a really common thing that I hear. And yes, you will have some employers that never return your calls. It's likely that they're the wrong person or they don't know what to do with the information that you provided to them. So again, research first. Know who you're going and talking to, know what their challenges are, do everything you can to learn as much as you can, and try and reach the right person. If you ask for talent acquisition specialist, maybe now you ask for the person in charge of recruiting CNAs. So maybe we just change how we're asking for what it is that we're looking for. Challenge two is they want those immediate results, right? I don't have time to wait for people to go through 12 16 weeks, maybe longer, right? I can't wait that long to bring people on board. So always start small with a pilot, show quick wins, and communicate regularly. I, in quick wins, like to work with my workforce development one-stop centers to get some quick wins under the belt to show that the partnership is viable and build trust. So it is really on a case-by-case situation, but definitely try to get some quick wins on the front end. I also hear sometimes like budget constraints, like we don't have money to put towards this or training, or we can't partner on this. Um, Always demonstrate that ROI. Once you have data, it's powerful. And there is some national data on things like this that you can find. You can also seek shared funding, grants, braid your funding streams together with your Title One. Is a great place to do some braided funding. So make sure that you're thinking about it from that perspective. And a fourth challenge is staff turnover disrupts relationships. So people don't often think about this one until it happens. Your contact leaves or switches positions in the company. And you're like, what do I do now? I got to start all over. We don't want that to happen. So you want to build multiple contacts. You want to make sure that you're documenting processes and you have some type of institutional memory. At one point, I was advising a company because they had so much turnover in their recruitment department. I knew more than any single person that was there because the relationship was there long enough. So we got two more polls, but I'm curious from you, what barrier do you experience the most when engaging employers? Is it that they won't return your call? They want the immediate results? Budget constraints limit the partnership? Staff turnover disrupts relationships? So, just curious if you guys experience one of these a little bit more over the others. That might give me some indications of some additional resources that we can provide you guys as you navigate through. Budget constraints. Oh, I'd love to talk to budget constraints. Okay. Well, luckily, we don't really have much disruption of staff, so that's really good to know. But budget constraints. I would love to chat with you guys a little bit more about budget constraints and opportunity to kind of get some grants and weave funding. So I'll make sure that I pull some additional resources and we will get them up for you guys because I want you, when you leave here, to be able to start to action plan. And so when you are starting to think about how you're going to create your approach to employers, I kind of like to give you this 30-day action plan. So in week one, I recommend you research and prepare. Identify 5 target employers using the 4 channels that I provided you. Research each company, their recent news, any data, any challenges that you can find, and prepare your value proposition and your business language. In week two, contact 3 of those employers using your bridge framework, attend one industry association meeting, and connect with your workforce development partners. And then in week three, follow up on some initial contacts. Maybe you propose a small pilot demonstration, schedule some value demonstration meetings. And then in week four, maybe you're at a point where you can conduct some pilot programs, collect feedback, and you can plan the next phase. But there is this action planning document in your toolkit that you can use that can really help you start to plan and map things out. So last poll of the day, I always like to know what is one specific action you think that you're going to take in the next 30 days to build your employer partnerships and enhance them. And so, when you have a second, if you could pop on in here and let me know what specific action you're going to take over the next 30 days in order to improve your employer partnerships, build those bridges for your learners, um, and do the great work that you're doing. Let me give you guys a minute. As you guys are typing, keep typing. I'm going to come back to this slide. But I did want to go through our key takeaways and a few housekeeping things as we kind of close out our time together. I just want to reinforce that employer engagement is not accidental, it is systematic. You have to plan for it to happen, you have to be diligent, and you have to look at it like a relationship, like you would any other relationship that you're trying to nurture. Start with research and relationship building in and of itself. Speak business outcomes and not education features. That's one way to get yourself in the door. Begin with those small pilots to demonstrate value. Sustain partnerships through regular communication, even if it's just a hey, how are you doing? What's going on in your world? Those are great touch points. And make sure you track and report your measurable impact. In your toolkit, what I provided to you was a bunch of different templates, links to some reports and data, talking points for working with skeptical employers, ROI calculators, partnership lifecycle tracking. Feel free to change those in whatever way that you would like. They're for you to use and make yours. And we at AALPD have a discussion group, and you can continue the conversation around employers or any other topic that you want. And so, if you are interested in joining our discussion group, you can reach out to our moderator, David Rosen. Um, and there is his email. I'm sure we will go ahead and there we go. Already dropped in the chat. And we have some workshops coming up. So in December, one of our favorite formats is member sharing session. And so on December 10th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to have a member sharing spotlight session. And we just want to give a plug for our pre-conference at COABE. Last year, our pre-conference was on learning transfer evaluation. And out of that, we introduced communities of practice and PLCs, and people asked for more. So we're doing a full day in-person workshop on the PD pit crew, powering up learning communities and COPs. So we hope to see you there. And we would love for you guys to help us plan for the future. There's a QR code up here, but we're also going to drop a link in the chat. Thank you, Sarah, that talks about kind of how you can provide guidance to us on what we could do for you. And so we want to know what else you want to learn about. And then if you're looking to get in touch with me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You got my email up there, as well as my company's website. I am happy to meet with anybody at any time to talk about your strategy for employer engagement. It's something that I've been doing for a really long time, so I feel really good about having any type of conversation possible. Let's see what some of our results say. Attend a workforce board meeting. Love that. Do some research on current employers. Create new language to better promote potential partners. Work on a business vocabulary. Yes. Work on business. Create an action plan. Like to strategize how to best disseminate this information to local program directors. Love it. I'm happy to have any conversations with anybody about how to best use this or how to turn this into a longer PD that really sets people up for a scaffolded session. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your time. I've had a lovely time talking with you guys. If there are any questions in the last few moments that I have you, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We can unmute whatever I could do to assist. I am happy to help. But thank you for spending your time with me today. I know it's can be really overwhelming to think about having to be like a salesperson almost. But I hope I gave you enough tools and resources to make you feel confident as you move forward. Thank you, everyone. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday, and we hope to see you on December the 10th at our sharing session. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kim.
Thanks, Sarah.